This is Kimberly Reuter. I'm business advisor and supply chain expert. And today I am here with Torsten Runge, and we are beginning our The Architect series. And this series focuses on the people. Right now, we're working on Amazon. We may go to other companies at some point in the future. But right now, we are focusing on the people who built Amazon, who in operations and supply chain built what you see today, laid the cornerstones for the operations and the success that you see in Amazon today. And a lot of the people we're going to talk to you, what they built, the algorithms, the code, all of that stuff that they designed is still in use today, 20, 15, 20 years later. So pretty amazing stuff. So Torsten, welcome. Thank you
Thank
for being
you.
here. So we're going to kick it off a little bit. I had you before and you told us about your greatest lesson. So get you to check that episode if you guys want to learn a little bit more about Torsten. But tell us a little bit what was going on. You started at Amazon very early. You made a joke early on that your parents called it, or your mom called it Amazon.bomb, because they thought that you were going to lose all your money doing this. So tell us what was going on with Amazon when you first started.
Yeah, sure. Uh, so actually, so the year, or roughly the years that we're looking at here, like for what we're talking about, the last mile and delivery spans and so on. That's around like the 2008, 2009 time frame. So
Hmm.
way back, right? And actually, you mentioned it, Amazon.bomb. Um, Article on time earlier. So it was the years where it turned out that it was not Amazon.bomb, or maybe a bomb for competitor
Yeah.
retailers, right? Or a bombshell for competitor retailers. And Amazon really just grew dramatically, right?
Hmm.
And let's actually, I'm talking about Europe here, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know kind of whether that happened earlier in the States or not, right? But anyway, so it grew dramatically,
Hmm.
right? And so actually, I do remember our shipping forecast for 2010 was to reach 200 million shipments to customer in 2010, which was obviously
For a year.
for a year. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, they do that like a month now.
absolutely. I can add it, right? Yeah, 200 million, which at the time was just an absolute mind
Absolute crazy number. Yeah. What? Yeah.
crazy number, right? So, and yeah, the situation, what happened, like, so probably since around like 2007, 2008, um, in at least in the transportation operational side, we were actually, if you like, too successful, right? So we had, given the volume, right? So at the beginning, when I joined Amazon, right, we were in a situation where Amazon was new, the dot bomb thing was still in people's
Yeah.
heads.
That was in Scotland, right? You started
Yeah,
in
actually, I
Scotland?
started in
Yeah, you
Scotland.
started in
Like,
Scotland.
yeah,
Yeah.
believe it or not, the epicenter of Amazon operations at the time was in a fulfillment center in Scotland, overlooking the River Clyde. Right? Actually, many Amazonians who've been there will tell you the fulfillment center with the most beautiful view
Filipino.
in the world. And it is actually, it is.
Yeah.
Um,
It was like 10 people, right? It was like you and 10 people, and you were doing BMVD, books for the people not who don't ever work at Amazon. BMVD stands for books, media, videos, and DVDs. So yeah, but you were doing BMVD. Okay.
exactly, right? So at the beginning, I was like, um, the almost the carriers like the Deutsche Post and the Royal Mails, etc., of this world, and some of the commercial guys like more like kind of DHLs and Hermes and etc.
Yeah.
They made us feel like that we had to be almost grateful to actually get in.
Yes. Oh, yeah, this is before Amazon was a 600-pound gorilla, right. So
Yeah,
this is back when we were beholden to the carriers. We were like,
exactly.
"Please take our freight,
Right.
please." Yes.
Exactly. Right. And as the volume grew, obviously the carriers got ever happier because every
Yes.
parcel carrier loves volume and more volume. So we were able to reduce cost of shipping the parcels by quite a lot year on year. And that's what I mean when I say like we got too successful is we
Mhm.
actually broke one um, uh, rule of how economics work, right? Which is that usually you promise more volume or you buy more volume, your price drops, right? So we got to the stage where we had so much volume where the carrier said, like, we cannot take this anymore. If you want
Yes.
to give us more, you need to pay.
If we could just fast forward just a moment, because that's just what happened with UPS and Amazon, is it not? Where UPS was like, "We actually don't want the volume anymore. Like, you're just gonna have to pay more."
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? So that's the
Yeah.
stage that we reached. And our initial, if you like, reaction was, and I couldn't get anything other than that, to add carriers, right?
Right.
Um, but that then gave us a problem, right? Because that means we had to manage more carriers.
More carriers. Oh, right.
Right. So, and then how do you across Europe, across what, 20, 25 parcel carriers, how do you keep your delivery promises to customers consistent, the delivery
Right.
performance consistent, and so
Right.
on and so on and so on. So it
Right.
actually gave us for a number of years, it gave us
Right.
massive headache, right?
Yes. What I wanna talk about was, you're jumping ahead just a little bit, but you actually when you started at Amazon, it was 10 of you, it was BMVD, and that's all you shipped. And so that's all they really shipped in Europe, right? Is you're just doing media and you're using the, media postal rates, which are extra cheap. And there really wasn't a lot of negotiation. And so the market started to change. And I want to dig into this because we really want to understand the market, because what you're going to tell us in our upcoming episodes is how you built an industry that did not exist in Europe, which is the last mile delivery.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So
So there was none of this existed when you started at Amazon. You guys were just doing books and that was it.
that was it. I was only
Yes.
after my first year at Amazon that I got, I think early December, a call or an email from
There you go.
Amazon.de and said, hey, Thorsten, look, we want to sell televisions this Christmas. Can you just, well, I'll actually,
Before that, you guys were just doing books,
yeah,
right, at
yeah,
BMVD, so it
exactly.
was like
And
BMVD to TVs.
you know, and actually, not only is a television not the size of a book, right? It's a fragile item,
It's actually fragile.
unwanted, upright, etc., etc.
Yeah,
So it's not.
and it's expensive, they're fragile, yeah, they're like a
It
whole
wasn't.
other
It
thing.
wasn't book toaster TV. It was book
Right.
TV. Yeah.
It was like books, some clothing, a little bit of in between, it was booked, like, the biggest, most complicated thing next to a mattress to actually, deliver, and this would have been, like, so 2000 when was this? Like, 2009 then?
Yeah. So it was late 2008,
Okay.
early 2009. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it was about when they were starting to do that. All right. So all of a sudden you have this challenge. You're in Amazon and you've got to start shipping TVs. And how much time did you have to kind of start working on this? What was the deadline for this?
Also for the TV thing, it was 3 weeks. It was early December, and Amazon.de said like we want to sell televisions for Christmas. I think this year Christmas, not next year Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, but
And they were like, no, this year Christmas.
that's what I loved about Amazon, right? Because it was just like the sky's the limit. Like, come on, let's do it, right? You know,
That's really like, let's dig in on that just for a minute there because I've heard that repeatedly from people that I've been interviewing from the old Amazon days. Like, I don't know what Amazon's like now, but the people I talk that work there now doesn't sound like the Amazon we worked at. Because when you and I started, you had 10 people in Europe in EU operations, and for me, when I started, I started January 1st, 2006. Um, there were 6,000 corporate employees in the United States. So it was a startup really back then. It was still considered a startup.
Yeah.
We were under our 10 years. So it was a totally different company. And what you just said was that, and this keeps coming up with people I talk about at Amazon, was that the sky was the limit. There were no rules. There were no rules. There was no guardrails. There was no ceiling. There was no floor. It was go as hard and as far as you can with this whatever we're doing. And I think that is something that we don't see today as much.
So if I, well, obviously I'm still talking to, apart from you talking to you, to other ex-Amazonians, right? No, it doesn't seem to be as much. I mean, you see, like there were no rules, and that there were only like a couple of rules. As in, like,
Yeah.
will whatever we do delight the customer?
Yep.
Will it reduce the price? Will it be convenient?
Yeah.
And so on. And as long as those few criteria were met, okay, go do it. What are
Yeah.
we waiting for, right?
Number 1, as long as the customer was happy, like, that was the biggest focus was that whatever went on behind the scenes, like, even if you had to work 18 hours straight to make sure, and I know that you have, to make sure that every container, like, made it or every shipment made it, we did it. Even if it was super manual, behind the scenes, sweat and tears, it was all about making sure that what the customer saw was as flawless as possible.
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm sure you did that in the US as well. Like, well, at least certainly in Europe, when it came to Christmas time, the last in the big push, the last whatever 2 3 days before Christmas,
Yeah.
we were on the shop floor in the fulfillment center packing, shipping,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Making sure it happened.
Including our local VP, everyone.
Yeah, everybody did. Yeah, Amazon had a program for a while. I don't know if they still have it, but back when I started, they had what they called the ELF program, and they would send executives out to the FCs to help fulfill during peak season. I think they got rid of it because the executives were just slow as hell and really didn't help. So they finally just stopped doing it. But there for a while, that was a jaw thing, I think, where he wanted to make sure that everybody pitched in and helped during peak season and helped out with the FCs. So that was a common practice, but I think they may have gotten rid of that now. Yeah, so good. I wanted to take a minute just to talk about that because, that we were giving birth to e-commerce basically then, right? Like this was all new, it was all greenfield. None of this stuff existed. The concept of using a courier to deliver a TV was crazy, right? Nobody was doing that.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
yeah, you had like yeah, so certainly like from a website as in e-tail, no.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah. You could go to a store and buy one and maybe they'd have a delivery guy bring it to you, but as far as going on a website and actually making a purchase.
yeah.
Now,
And
at
and
this
and I
time
know the big debate at the time, and not only in Amazon, was like, so yeah, okay, it's easy to buy a book on a website because you know what you're buying. It's a book.
right.
Book is like a bunch of paper bundled together, so there's not an awful lot that can go wrong, right? But to buy a television or anything really more complex or complex, would you trust the delivery company? Would you trust the e-tailer because you've never seen that friendly sales guy in your local TV shop and so on and so on, right? So it was a big trust question. Around
Yeah, it's
this.
interesting. We haven't talked about that yet. I mean, we're talking about the logistics of it or, or what was going on from a logistics push. But you bring up a really interesting point was that the customer trust, this is a whole new model. Like, I'm gonna look at something online that costs over $500, and I'm gonna have a complete stranger bring it to my house. Like, at that time, that was a completely foreign concept.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about, like, same day, I've talked about some people we've been talking about, building same day at Amazon here in the United States. that, we talked about that too, where all of a sudden having this stranger in a t-shirt and cutoff shorts standing in your yard with an Amazon package was like, what the hell is going on? I
Yeah.
mean, we used to get phone call after phone call after phone call. Like, I got some stranger at 8:30 at night standing in my front yard with my Amazon package. Like, get him the hell out of here. But now, like, people leave snacks for them. Like, they make friends with their delivery guy. But back then, that was such a foreign concept. If they weren't wearing a brown UPS uniform, there was no trust.
Yeah, absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's obviously gonna that's what I think sometimes people forget when we talk about Amazon logistics, right? Or and transportation. Uh, This wasn't just about finding a carrier, negotiating a rate and a service level agreement and so on. It was exactly about that because only guy the customer would ever see was the guy standing at the door, right?
Right.
And that better works 100%, right?
Yes, that made it be very comfortable for them. And you kinda touched on it a little bit too, like, this did not exist. What you're talking about is not going and hiring a last mile carrier and implementing at Amazon. You had to create the last mile carrier structure, the whole concept of it.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanna make sure that we really focus on that because a lot of times when, we interview people and they're like, "Oh, I built last mile at so and so company." They did, and that's cool, and that's very something to be, proud of, but what you did is create an industry.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And really
Yeah.
had to change the mindset of carriers, right? And we spent lots and lots of time probing carriers, negotiating, and so on, and penalty clauses in the contracts, and so
Oh,
on.
right, I remember that.
Also,
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more, like, we've been talking about, like, the customer and Amazon, like, all this was new, but yeah, so you're talking to carriers who are like, "What the F are you talking about? You want us to do what?" Yeah, so tell us what was going on that side.
and there was a lot of like, yeah, but no, we don't do that, right? And it's
We don't do that. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm,
like,
mm-mm.
I looked into a lot of faces over the years and I said, no, 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 no. Now he's lost it, right? And yeah, and that's also something that we work a lot on. I worked a lot on is you have to take people with you, right? I mean, it's like
Yes.
if you just write something in a contract, so and whatever will penalize you terribly if you fail and so on. Okay, it's negative motivation. That doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
You have to take people with you, and I
yeah.
spent a lot of time with whatever the DHLs and Royal Mails and Poste Italiens, etc., of this world to get that done, right?
Yeah, to really kinda think outside the box. I was talking to one of my counterparts at DHL that I worked with when I was building Amazon Global, and she touched on what you and I are talking on too, is that at the time, it was like, there were no rules. Like, I don't care about Incoterms. Like, I do care about Incoterms, but I'm not gonna be constrained by those things.
Yeah.
There was no yeah,
Nice.
I understand how they work, let's make them work for us, was kind of the message that we had to deal with, right?
Well,
Um, so we were working with all those constraints. So that is a beautiful picture of what was going on in the market at Amazon at the time. Thank you very much. So this is the beginning of last mile courier delivery in the EU. So this is our first episode, which is to dig into what is going on in the marketplace. So please tune in with us for episode 2, where we're going to learn from Torsten how he went about even solving this problem that had never been solved before. So please tune back in next week when we have Torsten's second episode. And thank you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Torsten, anything you want to say before we leave?
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Bye.